ABC7 Extra.
Good evening. I'm Saul Saenz, and this is ABC7 Extra Sunday Edition. Thank you for spending your Sunday evening with us. Sunday Extra covers the week's top stories, and this week it was the weather. We started the week with cold temperatures that dropped even lower when the winds kicked in. Your thermometer may have shown one thing, but the feel-like temperatures, well, you felt it, and it told a different story.
Right now it is cold. And if you were watching on Monday, you know I left the comfort of the studio lights and the anchor desk to bring you those frigid conditions from downtown El Paso. Those winds toppled a tree, crushing 2 cars and a motorcycle. Cold temperatures stuck around, but the winds calmed down on Tuesday and Wednesday. Then Thursday rolled around, and hurricane-force winds blew a path of destruction. Strong gusts ripped the roof right off of this apartment complex, displacing as many as a dozen families.
We were trying to put the baby down for a nap, and we just heard this crash on the window, and he was already coming out because he saw the wind blowing really bad out here.
And we ended up looking out the window, and the whole top of the roof was gone.
Cars were squashed underneath the debris. Power lines were damaged, leaving hundreds without electricity during one of the coldest days. Those winds were widespread throughout the borderland. This mobile home in Socorro lost its roof as well. And across the border, this movie theater sign snapped like a toothpick. Migrant shelters withstood those fierce winds because Juarez officials say they brace for the inclement weather.
And joining me to talk about the winter outlook is our very own ABC7 Chief Meteorologist, Dave Spielman, whom we all call Doppler Dave. Sitting next to him is the person all meteorologists in the borderland rely on, Jason Laney, a warning coordination meteorologist for the National Weather Service. Also joining us is Vice President of Energy Delivery for El Paso Electric, Omar Gallegos. Thank you all for joining us this Sunday evening. Now, we're going to start with you, Doppler. What we experienced this week, was it rare? Do we normally get these strong winds events in January?
You know, not typically, but I'll tell you what, we have the jet stream and these jet streaks, these peak wind gusts that just develop like a river of wind right on top of us. And this is just normal for El Nino, what we talked about. And then we get these extreme winds. I mean, it's probably not going to be over with. We're probably going to see more of these wind situations where we have 60, 70 mile an hour winds. And then, of course, the cold air comes in and we have the wind chills, which was brutal as well. So we anticipate seeing some more of this.
Some more of the double whammy?
Yeah. I mean, we had, what, Monday?
Yep.
And then we get a little bit of a break, a few days. And then, of course, yesterday we had it. And we're likely to see, you know, who knows? We could see 1 or 2 more big wind events coming our way.
Okay. Mr. Laney, the National Weather Service is charged with issuing warnings. How do you coordinate with school districts, TV stations, and, of course, emergency management?
Well, you know, that's a good question because different people have different thresholds, first of all. What you guys do here at ABC7 and what my buddy Doppler Dave does is he gives the forecast for the public and everybody. Well, what we do with the National Weather Service, we've identified what we call our core partners. That could be folks with El Paso Electric, those that are involved in the energy sector. It could be emergency managers and first responders, those that are tasked to follow up on this in case something goes wrong. It's school districts preparing to decide what they should do, and it's departments of transportation, those that are in charge of the roadways. So leading up to a storm, long before a storm ever hits, part of my job is to make the connections and make the relationships with these people and understand how the individual weather impacts them and what they are trying to do. You know, someone who's outside without a coat, 50 degrees can be cold. Someone who grew up in Minnesota and is well bundled up, 50 is not that big a deal. So you have to realize that even though the weather is the same, the way it impacts what we do and the betterment of life and the protection of life and property is different in every sector. So as the National Weather Service, when we identify things of this nature, we begin to put together specialized products that don't just talk about the forecast, but they talk about what we think the impacts to each individual segment is going to be. We begin to share that because the goal is not to change the weather. We can't do that yet. No. I wish I could, but it is to make sure that people are prepared, and preparedness leads to resiliency, and that's the type of community that I work to coordinate with as part of my role.
And we appreciate it. Mr. Gallegos, how does El Paso Electric brace for a wind and frigid event like the one we just had this week? Do you prepare the grid, or is it already prepared ahead of time so that El Pasoans don't lose power, despite the fact that some did lose power?
Yeah, no, definitely. We prepare in two different horizons. We are always preparing year-round and performing maintenance on all of our infrastructure, replacing aging infrastructure, testing the equipment, and testing the grid to make sure that it can withstand expected wind events. And then as we hear, and we definitely rely on all of the forecast to help us prepare for the immediate threat of winds. We practice an incident management plan. And we execute that because it's more than just responding to a couple of calls. We prepare for that in advance. We have engineers that help us get lined up, that they go out and they perform damage assessment, let us know what damage they're finding, so that way we can kind of triage the events that are coming in, and we know where to send crews, where to send material. So it becomes a very synchronized effort that we prepare for. We put all hands on deck, and that's how we prepare. In addition to making sure that we have sufficient material and inventory to restore power.
Just like we can't predict what Mother Nature is going to do, you all can't predict for possible damage to some of those power lines. Is that something that you anticipate ahead of time? I know that you were talking about it briefly, but when you look at the weather and you see, all right, some of these are the trouble spots, is that where you place your folks?
Yeah, so I think it's not so much the specific areas. It depends, right, on the event that's occurring. We definitely know that if it's west to east winds, they come off the mountainside very aggressively, as we saw with that apartment that was in the video earlier, right? And so yeah, depending to some degree where the winds are coming from and what the gusts are being predicted to be, sometimes we know that they come off of that mountainside, and so we prepare accordingly.
Okay, thank you so much. We're going to take a really quick break. You're watching ABC 7 Extra. Still ahead, we examine what the rest of this winter season will look like and what we can expect warmer days ahead. We'll be right back.
There are trucks, and then there's the GMC Sierra. Available with the connected driving experience. And the world's first 6-function multi-pro tailgate. GMC Sierra. It's the truck. Or get $4,500 purchase cash on select GMC Sierra models.
See your El Paso Las Cruces GMC dealers.
At Planet Fitness, you can get energy without the judgment.
Whoa. Hi, can you help me with this?
You don't know how to use it?
Not yet. This is better.
Join the judgment-free zone. Never intimidating, always free fitness training and equipment for every workout. Join today during the Big Fitness Energy Sale for 24 cents down, $10 a month, cancel anytime. Deal extended through January 19th.
The Window Depot has everything you need to create the kitchen or bathroom of your dreams. Browse the aisles of in-stock cabinets available in a variety of sizes and configurations and instantly elevate your space today. Visit a showroom and let our experts guide you. Whether you're choosing from ready-to-go designs or creating a custom masterpiece, we can help you select the perfect wood type, color, and style. And top it off with unique hardware to complete your look. Find a location near you at thewindowdepot.com. The Window Depot, more than a window store.
It's cold. It's cold, and the way this wind is blowing, it's like cutting through. So I had to layer up.
How many layers?
Got 2 jackets on and my shirt. Actually have thermals on. Not prepared.
Comparing Ohio to here, it's very cold here. I was expecting much nicer weather. I was planning to come down ahead of time and play some golf, but I'm glad I looked at the weather because it's not, I would have prepared and brought golf shirts and shorts, and not going to work here. It's cold.
Not a whole lot of folks got to play golf. Welcome back to ABC 7 Extra Sunday Edition. You just heard from out-of-town visitors who were not prepared for this cold weather. Now, I also want to welcome back ABC 7 Chief Meteorologist Dave Spielman, whom we all call Doppler Dave. Sitting next to him is the person all meteorologists in the borderland rely on, Jason Laney, a warning coordination meteorologist for the National Weather Service. Also joining us is Vice President of Energy Delivery for El Paso Electric, Omar Gallegos. Mr. Laney, I want to start with you this time. What happens at the National Weather Service when you see in your models telling you we're in store for some potentially damaging weather? Is it all hands on deck? I understand you were burning the midnight oil, right?
Yeah, I was. I actually spent most of this past week working the graveyard shift. We actually staff 24/7 because weather doesn't take a break, and we have different forecast cycles we go through. But to address your question, when we see some of this show up on the models and some of the forecasts there, first thing that we look at is we try to look at this in more of a probabilistic standpoint. You know as well as I do that at the end of the day, it's all binary. Either it rains, it doesn't. Either it gets cold or it doesn't get cold. The wind blows dangerously or it doesn't blow at all. But when we start seeing these things unfold, usually we're some 7 to 10 days ahead getting some heads up. That's just how good forecast models are. But they're not perfect. We have to look at these, and we look for consistency in those. We start putting out initial heads up, and we start planning to staff. For instance, yesterday during the big storm, and I blew it for you, didn't I?
You were referring to actually Thursday, right?
Yeah, I was referring to Thursday there. When the big storm came in, we knew that we were going to have a lot of needs. Phones were ringing off the hook. Partners were asking all sorts of things that were going to go there. I had just come off working the midnight shift. We had some damage showing up in parts of town. So we bring in extra bodies. We're a pretty small staff, believe it or not, and trying to staff 24/7, 365 days a year. But I am really proud of the folks that work with us here at the National Weather Service. Everybody that gets into this line of business, whether it be on the television side or for the government side, we do it because we love weather, but we also understand the implications that it can have. So we start messaging early and often, and when the storm is actually on top of us, we make sure we have enough people there to continue that messaging to help us all, in other words, to kind of weather that storm.
When people,
so I just want to, you know, these guys do a great job. And we all share information, but like Jason said, they work around the clock, and they're putting out graphics. They're trying to, you know, we're all trying to get on the same page. We don't want to come on TV and say something totally opposite from what the Weather Service is going with as they send out their messages. So, you know, we got to come to this agreement. We look and we share information, and we come up with a forecast. So these guys, you know, work really hard and help everybody, not only the media, but the community as well.
Well, I had a follow-up question for Mr. Laney. I know that when we're covering hurricanes, there are different models that try to predict where exactly that hurricane is going to hit. Do you rely on different models as well to determine what kind of winds and what kind of inclement weather we're going to have?
Yeah, we have a plethora of models, and if we just go back about 10 years ago, we were looking at 3, 4, or 5 different models, and we had certain models that we would assume worked better in one situation or another. Well, would you believe we're now looking at between 120 and 150 different models every time the weather comes up? That's a lot to kind of fathom there, and that's how we can kind of come up with probabilities. Are they all clustered together saying the same thing, or do we have this widespread that we need to communicate there? But we will tell you that here locally in the borderland, as we start getting closer to the time of arrival for a storm, we rely a lot on what we call our high resolution type models, and they are cut down to such a small grid size, and they are actually running themselves in almost a little bit of AI, if you will. We look at this and say, how did this perform in a similar situation last time, last year, so many years ago? And that helps us really kind of hone in on things. And even though I've been doing this for years and years and years, there's just something about it when that forecast comes together, you see it in the models, and you know which model is going to perform best. And then the day that it unfolds, like a few days ago, even I am astonished at how well this came together. And we hope that that builds trust in the forecast that we as the National Weather Service are pushing out, that Doppler Dave is passing along to the public there, because when people trust the process and trust what we're saying is going to happen, it really helps everyone be just that much better prepared.
Mr. Gallego, how many crews does El Paso Electric have spread out throughout the borderland just in case something happened to slam into some particular area, some side of town?
Yeah, and so we really are flexible the way that we dispatch personnel. We have about 200 in terms of field personnel that can go out and repair lines. And so then when events like this unfold, depending on the type of damage, it may be in pairs, it may be individuals restoring the smaller ones. And so we really think about it more as personnel. So we have about 200 personnel available to respond to events like this.
Okay, we're going to take another quick break, but when we come back, Doppler Dave is going to break down what sort of effect we have going on right now that's causing all this I guess, inclement weather, the winds, the snow, and if we're expecting more snow. We'll talk about that when we come back. Don't go away.
EP Fabtech Metals, your local one-stop shop for roof and wall panels, trims, accessories, ES1 edge metal, custom modulars, project design consultations, and metal installation certification courses. Located at 1381 Darrington Road. Visit us today.
Oh, that spin class was brutal. I bet. Can I put some music on? Pick something we all like, something we can dance to. What's your Buick's Wi-Fi password? Buick Envision? Oh, you should pick something stronger. Noted. That's a really tight spot. I used to hate parallel parking. Me too.
The Buick Envision, built around you, all of you.
Get 1.9% APR on select Buick SUV models. Plus, current eligible non-GM owners get up to $1,250 purchase allowance. See your El Paso Las Cruces Buick dealers.
Preparing for a road trip takes a lot of planning to make sure you reach your destination. Dodds Wealth Management Group is your local financial planning firm. We are fiduciaries and obligated to act in our clients' best interest. No one knows what life changes will come, so let us help you be ready when they do. Dodds Wealth Management Group, creating, building, and preserving wealth.
The Sunbolt cars are back at Oscar Leaser's Hyundai of El Paso, and they're available direct to you for a limited time. Sunbolt Elantras and Sonatas, Tucsons and Santa Fe's, even Palisades, fully stocked and fully equipped. All available with zero cash out of pocket. Interest rates as low as 0% APR, and payments as low as $289 a month on Sunbolt Sonatas. And Oscar Leaser's Hyundai of El Paso is fully stocked today. The cars, crossovers, SUVs, and electric vehicles you want. The Sunbolt cars are back at Oscar Leaser's Hyundai of El Paso.
Can't get to a TV? Stay up to date and watch every ABC7 newscast wherever you are. Complete coverage of breaking news and accurate, reliable storm track weather streaming live on KVIA.com and the free KVIA News app.
Welcome back to the third and final segment of ABC 7 Extra Sunday Edition. I also want to welcome back our ABC 7 Chief Meteorologist, Doppler Dave. Sitting next to him is the person all meteorologists in the borderline rely on, Jason Laney, a warning coordination meteorologist for the National Weather Service. Also joining us is Vice President of Energy Delivery for El Paso Electric. I'm going to start with you, Doppler, because you have some models that can essentially explain why we're going through what we're going through. What are they?
Well, you know, if you look at the El Nino, that's the pattern we're in now. We have a very strong El Nino, but if you look at the graphic, the jet stream drops south. We get this warm water off the equatorial Pacific, the eastern Pacific, and that brings in the moisture. We get those westerly winds. These storms head in our direction, and you can see much of the southwest and the south. We get above average moisture supplies. And then the colder temperatures, look at that. From El Paso off towards the east, we're looking at colder than normal. So really it's like a timing effect. We bring in the moisture. If we bring in enough cold air, that's when we could see above average amounts of snowfall. And we go past and look at recent El Ninos. And again, we're in a strong El Nino right now. It's expected to last until right around June. But if you look at some of these numbers, look at 2007, 2009, 2015. We had some healthy amounts of snowfall, you know, getting close to 10 inches. So we are anticipating more snow than average. About 5 inches is what we expect.
But we haven't had that precipitation yet to have the white stuff, right?
No, we just had the winds with this system. Now we had, you know, a little period of where we had some snow flurries, but certainly had the winds. And again, with the jet stream overhead, you get about 4, 5, 6 miles up in the atmosphere. You know, these winds could be 170, 240 miles an hour. And that translates down to the ground at times where we have these strong winds. So we get these jet streaks, and we get these strong winds that hit us.
Mr. Gallegos, do you have some tips for our folks at home to avoid possible brownouts, or is that even a possibility? What do you suggest folks do?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of things that folks can do in terms of you know, fastening down things that can fly away. We have a lot of outages that are caused by trampolines or different things that get into the lines, and when they get up into the lines and arc, they can damage the wire, and then it causes the brownouts. You know, it could be, you know, when you see extreme events like what we saw unfold on Thursday, where the roof of an apartment building comes down, that's very difficult for the public to try out. But for sure, fastening down anything that can fly up and get into the line would be greatly appreciated. And then also just reporting any down lines that they see if the lines are down. Many times those lines may be communication lines, but as a public citizen, you don't know if the line is energized or not. So we recommend that you continue to report those. And then we bring that into our dispatch operation center and triage and make sure that we send somebody out to look at that.
Are brownouts even possible?
Well, so
with the grid we have here?
Well, yeah, I mean, we did have some outages that occurred on Thursday with the event, and on Monday. We had approximately about 4,000, between 4,000 and 5,000 customers out in each of the days. And because of our preparations with personnel, within a couple of hours, we get the majority, the large number of customers back in. But yes, it does occur, many times, as shown, when trees come down, trees can come on the lines, come down on the lines. That'll cause an outage for the residents of that area. Same like when the roof came off on Thursday, I believe it damaged some of our lines and also caused outages.
You mentioned trampolines, flying trampolines with all this wind. My daughter, Kristen, has an embedded trampoline that obviously won't fly away. Do you prefer these? Or do you prefer that folks have these sort of trampolines rather than the ones that you have to either string down or can fly out and damage some power lines?
Yeah, and really all we ask for the public to do is to try to fasten stuff down, right, and secure it to something fixed. If it's a trampoline that is not fixed to the ground, ensure that it's fastened down, when these events are coming up. I think with the weather forecast that comes out, I think that there's an excellent job giving us all forewarning that the winds are coming, and we should all try to do our part to fasten down the things that are out there.
Mr. Laney, you saw how some folks lost property, especially that apartment complex that lost the entire roof. Should homeowners have an emergency kit ready, and what do you think it should include?
It's always a good idea. Preparation is the key to getting through any type of weather system there. Typically in a situation like what we're dealing with around here in the winter time, we're going to get the big winds, we're going to get wind damage. On occasion, as Doppler just told us, we're going to get some snow. Fortunately, our snows don't tend to snow us in for weeks at a time, but it's always good for folks to have an emergency kit handy. We suggest first and foremost having a flashlight and fresh batteries, because you never know when you're going to lose power. And along those lines, you need to make sure you have plenty of blankets. And I think one of the emergency kits that a lot of people forget about is they may have an emergency kit at home, but they forget about having those emergency kits in the car. So many times we hear stories of the people who have gone out there traveling, they have automobile problems, maybe roads are closed, or maybe a tree has come down and blocked a path. And until first responders can get there and take care of them, other than just being inside the automobile, they have no way to stay warm, they have no food, they have no water to get to. So it's always good to think ahead of that, and the best time to prepare, and I know it's cliche, but the best time to prepare is long before a storm ever comes. Anticipate what could be the worst case scenario, and what would I need to get me through it until help can come my way.
Doppler, it's Sunday night. What can we expect this week as folks are preparing for the work week? More cold temps?
Well, we have another system. This is an Arctic air system that's going to be dropping down from up north. And, it's really going to impact a good portion of the state of Texas. We're going to be on the warmer side of this system, on the western side. But I'll tell you what, you get into places like Dallas and maybe Midland, Odessa, and the Houston area. I mean, they're going to see very, very cold temperatures and some brutal wind chills that they're going to have to experience out there. Now, Tuesday, that's going to be pushed in here. So we think we're going to be generally, maybe mid-40s. We'll have some wind chills, but then, the cold air is going to be short-lived. It's going to move off towards the east of us. But really, the farther east you go into Texas, I mean, they're going to be in store for several days of very brutal conditions for them.
Speaking of being in store, are we in store for some more strong winds?
We could see some on Tuesday again as the system will be on the western side of the system. So certainly we're going to see some winds and some wind chills. It will be cold, but at least it's not going to last all week. I think by Wednesday, we'll start to see a transition to some warmer conditions.
Okay, Doppler, Mr. Laney, and of course, Mr. Gallego, thank you so much for sharing your Sunday evening with us.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. And you just heard it on ABC 7 Extra. Don't put away your winter jacket just yet and buckle up. We're in store for some more frigid weather, possibly snow if the El Nino pattern holds true. Dress the kiddos appropriately for school. I'm Saul Saenz, and this has been ABC 7 Extra Sunday edition. Thank you for joining us. Good night y buenas noches.
Thank you for watching. ABC 7 News is now available on any of these streaming services, as well as the KVIA News and KVIA Weather and Traffic apps.